three of us were sitting in a dark basement quilting away on a Peace Quilt Award that was due to be presented in just a couple of days. And we were feeling pretty tired and pretty overworked and a little bit sorry for ourselves that we were there alone working on it. And I shared something that I had been thinking about a lot of late, which was that I was feeling like we really ought to use our peace quilts to approach people in power, our elected officials, in a really personal way. And then there was more silence, and we kept on stitching. And all of a sudden, Anne next to me throws down her thimble, goes, "I've got it! We have to make a quilt, and we're going to get all 100 United States senators to spend a night sleeping under it." And I just looked at her like, to be kidding.
Well, that was how our 9th quilt got started. Instead of making it all ourselves, we decided to try to recruit a square from every state in the Union and have each square be based on a child's drawing, a child's vision of peace. And we called it the National Peace Quilt. We decided to ask each of the 100 U.S. senators to spend one night sleeping under this quilt and to make a statement in the logbook which accompanies the quilt, expressing their feelings, their dreams, and their visions about peace.
When I slept beneath the quilt, when I fell into a deep sleep and dreamed of peace, believe it or not, and a peace conference where I saw the leaders of all nations gathered together and talking in terms of peace and war as a method of settling international differences had been abandoned. And my heavens, when the alarm clock rang and I woke up, boy, I wore the biggest smile on my face that I've ever worn.
It's something that makes you think about peace, and of course I think will be used all over the country to help people to think about something that really we ought to all be thinking more of. It was kind of nice to just take it home, realize that so many of your colleagues had signed this, and realize that we ought to all be more concerned about peace than we are. Something like this gets children, adults, men and women, people all over the country interested because it's something that literally people can identify with.
No, I haven't slept under it yet. I know I'm scheduled to. I am scheduled to.
You have to find Massachusetts so you can sign it.
I think the effort with a quilt makes a difference. Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, Housing Act, the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, those things didn't happen because people here in Congress, my colleagues, said, oh, let's pass this legislation. It happened because people like the people, the women in Boise who are putting together this quilt, said, we're going to tell our representatives that something has to happen. It's the beauty of America. It's really the wonderful thing about this country.
Can somebody toss me a needle, please?
I remember quilting with Grandma when I was real little. She didn't do really fancy quilts then. It wasn't until she had more time to start quilting. And when I was little, she was still working with Grandpa out in the fields in the day and then quilting at night. But I remember sticking the needle in and pulling it up and coming around and just going back and forth and doing about an inch while she did a half quilt almost. She'd say, I can't see this needle at all. You could have thread it for me. Yeah, me too, now that I can't see.
You know, I have this superstition sort of about the quilting. Sometimes we'll get into an argument about whether square needs more quilting or not. I have this feeling like the more stitches are taken, each stitch adds to the power of the completed quilt. And I think that's because it means hours of people's lives.
Our first quilt was completed in May of 1982. It was made as a gesture of friendship from ordinary people in Boise, Idaho, to ordinary people in the Soviet Union. We found 35 people here who were willing to make squares depicting scenes of Idaho or scenes of life, things that we wouldn't want to see destroyed in a war. Somebody suggested to us that it would be appropriate to present the quilt to the Soviet Women's Committee, and so we did. And we asked them if they would send it to a town similar in size to Boise. We found out later that they sent it to a small town in Lithuania.
When we made the quilt, it was a complete act of faith. We made it as a gesture of goodwill to the ordinary people of the Soviet Union. And now that we're here in the Soviet Union, being so close, we felt that if we could make the personal connection with the people who received the quilt, that we would have come full circle.
We didn't know if we'd get any response to that first quilt at all. And frankly, in some senses, it didn't matter. But when the response came, it was so wonderful. We got a Christmas card from Lithuania written in Russian that we had to have translated. It was such an energizing feeling. And from that first small response, our relationship with the Soviet Women's Committee has grown, and that's what's really exciting about it. Ultimately, I think the purpose of making that first quilt was, it was a statement that we can't leave the process of diplomacy, of peacemaking to the experts, that ordinary people like ourselves have to be involved, we have to take the initiative, we have to make the effort if there's going to be peace on the planet.
But just look at those trees. Can't you smell the breeze? Well, don't forget your skis, 'cause this is Idaho. We got fish in the lakes, we got snakes, we got quakes. We ain't got no sweepstakes. Yeah, but we're gonna have the Pacific coastline any year now. Well, now I've been all kinds of places, from Honolulu to Hackensack, but they ain't got what we've got, and that's why I came back. We got beautiful hills. Watch out for that snowmobile. We got whitewater thrills here in Idaho. Where else would you want to go but good old Idaho? Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'd like everyone to have a seat who is not waiting for ice cream so that we can begin the program. Welcome to the celebration of the 12th Boise Peace Quilt, the local Peacemakers Peace Quilt. First, I'd like to introduce Heidi Reed, who has probably put the most stitches in the most Boise Peace Quilts.
The Boise Peace Quilt Project was born of two mothers, Diane Jones and Ann Houserath, mothers of young children who were searching for a way to help defuse the hostile world situation. They chose quilt making because they thought it would be a uniquely American gesture of friendship, and they thought it would be fun. Lately, everybody that we talk to, and we're getting phone calls. My son, very bored the other day, answered the phone and said, "Mom, it's the New York Times again." I thought we'd gotten to a pretty strange place. But everybody who wants to talk to us now says, it's real nice, but why quilts? Why quilting? We feel peace quilting is a good avenue now, for it's such an apt metaphor for stitching together our ragged and torn worlds. Pete Seeger wrote us a word of encouragement as we were just embarking on our journey, and he gave us a thought which we've kept and shared as our motto. He wrote us, "The quilt is a symbol of the world which must come, one new pattern made out of many old patterns." Then he added, "We'll stitch this world together yet. Don't give up." This is for the peace quilters.
I'd like to say something about the Nicaragua quilt, the next Boise Peace Quilt, which is in the back of the room. The Nicaragua Peace Quilt will hang in the schools, the youth organization, and the churches in various rural and urban cities and towns in Nicaragua. It is our way of showing the Nicaraguan people that we care very deeply about what's happening in their country.
The Nicaragua quilt grew out of a sense that as peacemakers in this country, we really needed to make a statement about a situation in which our own government was involved in creating war in Nicaragua. We felt that that was something we couldn't avoid, we needed to address.
I think we have to be careful. I wouldn't want it to be construed as endorsing the Sandinista government, because we're not giving it to the government, we're giving it to the people.
People in this town haven't been particularly warm to that quilt. Even this group hasn't been, until this moment, particularly warm to that quilt. And if we decide to do that, I think we've got to realize that there's probably going to be even more negative reaction given any connection with Daniel Ortega.
There's a cost.
Yeah.
There's a cost to our group.
We've committed ourselves to reaching agreement by consensus, which means that when you come to a conclusion, everyone in the group is able to live with that decision. And that means you have to invest a lot of time and a lot of personal care in the process. And it can take us months to reach a satisfactory and right conclusion about group action.
We are making an enormous public statement. And it's kind of coming out of the closet for us, perhaps. And do we want to come out of the closet? And I think we've been struggling with that for the last 9 months of this quilt, is how public do we really want to be? I mean, we can send it and it will do okay in Nicaragua. It's not what happens as much in Nicaragua as what happens in this country with it.
I think some of these same fears were expressed when the first quilt was made. I know Anne has told me stories of how frightened people were of making a quilt for the Soviet Union and what the response in Boise would be. And we've just kind of evolved to this point.
I was expecting a negative response, at least in part, to the Nicaragua quilt, because obviously that's a very political issue, and this is a very conservative community. We took the quilt around to churches on Sunday morning. We showed the quilt, explained what we were doing, and asked people to donate and have their names embroidered on the quilt. And the reception was overwhelmingly positive. We raised over $3,000 and purchased school supplies for a primary school in Managua. So our trip to Nicaragua last summer was to bring both the quilt and friendship and school supplies. The Peace Quilt Project, I think, seems very mild-mannered. Really, what we're after is to try to create a change at the grassroots from a culture of war to a culture of peace, from a culture of selfishness to a culture of understanding. And that's an extremely radical change. I mean, Einstein said with the breaking of the atom, everything changes except our way of thinking. I think if you're really a peacemaker in the modern age, what you're working at is changing people's way of thinking. You're working at changing your own way of thinking, and you're working at changing the way of thinking of the community at large, and it's a tremendous job.
Jenny's going to fix it. There's nothing we can do about the paint.
I think we should start over.
No.
I think you should embroider over it somehow.
Have you heard anything from Russia lately?
I had a letter from
Did you?
Russia.
Oh, from whom?
Vladimir in Vilnius. and he sent me books on Lithuania and asked me to order him a book on hang gliding.
Well, we conceived the idea of cooperatively making a peace quilt with our friends at the Soviet Women's Committee. And we proposed to them that they make a part of a quilt top and design it themselves, and that American women make a part of the quilt top, the American part to be made of 40 fabric portraits of real children, 20 of them Americans, 20 of them Soviets. And the Soviet women agreed to our proposal, and in the months following sent us photographs of Soviet children from all over the Soviet Union. And these were given to American seamstresses. Some of us stitched Soviet children, and some of us stitched our own.
Where is she? Look at her. Isn't she darling? She looks just like one of our kids. But see, look at the dog. Isn't that dog great? Put that dog. They wouldn't let me put the dog in her.
Wonder what, is this Russian?
That's Russian, right. And she's from one of the Eastern republics in the Soviet Union.
I like her eyelashes.
And this one was done by a Hmong refugee woman of her daughter in Seattle. Here, Katie. Katie, you want to hold it? Let's see if it looks like. Oh, it looks just like you.
Oh, it does.
Oh, it
look
does.
Like Katie
And it's beautiful.
Mine. Oh,
That's yours. Oh, pretty. It is
That's you.
Can you hold it like that?
Anyone else?
I have a lot of various fantasies about what the Soviet section might be like, and in my worst nightmares, they're a different size than ours. They don't fit together, and it's late at night. I'm going to love telling about the squares, and this is so-and-so's, child, and that kind of thing.
Don't forget my grandson.
And this is Jean's grandson, Graham, whose hair really is that curly.
I don't know, my images of Russia are just really intricate. Color. I think of their churches, the Russian Orthodox Church, and how it's the spires and everything. I imagine that their embroidery will be real colorful. When you see the folk art pictures of their scarves and things like that, and their dresses, all kinds of neat different patterns, I think it'll be something like that.
How is it that it came about, this Soviet-American quilt that's being worked on right now? Because this is really the third one that's involved with the Soviets.
It was funny. My mother sent quilt postcards to a friend of hers who lives in rural Pennsylvania. She's a court stenographer, has been for many years. And she wrote back to me and said, I really think that they ought to hang one of your peace quilts behind the arms negotiators in Geneva. And then she said, no, I think they should hang one in front of the arms negotiators in Geneva. And I said that story to everybody who was gathered for a meeting one Sunday morning, and there was a little pause, and then all of a sudden everybody goes,
What? We said, we'll do it. We'll do it. And we've done it. It's the way we've carried with every project that pieces in our life.
We have these wonderful ideas, and then suddenly we go, oh my, what have we decided we're going to do?
And the thing that makes it so amazing is then we go do it.
How do you do? I'm Heidi from Idaho.
I'm Jill from Birmingham.
Glad to meet you.
A British group called Mothers for Peace invited the Boise Peace Quilt Project and also delegates from the Soviet Women's Committee to join them in Britain for a gathering of Soviet, American, and British mothers. And we thought this was a perfect opportunity to bring the various portions of the quilt top together.
And I think this comes back to what I've been feeling since I met you this morning and you unfolded that quilt, because I must say that I had thought it was a lovely idea and sort of, a sort of nice creative idea, and I wasn't I'm sure now that I haven't seen the implications of it, and I think the whole point is that it's demonstrating a cooperative way of dealing with one another. I think one of the problems we seem to have got ourselves into is seeing conflict equals war, and conflict is bad. We haven't actually learned to deal with conflict, and war's nothing to do with dealing with conflict. It's the failure to deal with conflict that causes war.
It has to do with everyone being a connected part of the same organism.
Yes.
And when one part has success, then we all succeed. I think that's the female way of looking at things versus the male. The only way to gain power is to vanquish another.
And the painful
must tell us who our enemy is. I mean, when I was a young woman, I had to hate Germans. Now I can love Germans and I've got to hate Russians. I mean, they're crazy.
I think it's also very easy for us in Europe, and I know I catch myself doing it and I don't like it. I begin to feel very angry with America, specifically with Reagan, I have to add. And then I remind myself when I meet Americans, this is absolutely insane. I can feel angry with their policies, but for goodness sake, let it stop there. So I think what we just have to question is the whole notion of enemies. Why enemies? Not who's the enemy, but why?
Well, that'd be nice.
Isn't it more blue?
Going to Geneva.
Yes, there are lots of needles down in the middle. Look.
It's more blue thread.
Oh, that's your needle. Sorry, I'll take it.
Oh!
So what we have next to do is sew the bottom row of squares, and when we meet with the Soviet women, they have done a center panel. We don't know what will be on it, or what color it will be, or what style of decoration, or what form. So we'll come together and stitch the world together.
We met the Soviet women on the Isle of Wight. Marina was photojournalist for the Soviet Women's Committee, the mother of a teenage son and a young daughter. Kenish Khan had come all the way from Kyrgyzia on the Chinese border, mother of 5 and grandmother of 4.
Just to show to each other.
Now a little toward Ellie.
Then tell us about this symbol. We're trying to guess about it.
You know, it depends. It will be in the middle. It is colorful. I think it will be nice.
It's going to go beautifully with your children.
Yes, of course. This is traditional Russian style of sewing. This is made by machine. And this is words in Russian. За мирное и счастливое будущее для всех детей. And this is in English for peaceful, yes, and secure future for children all over the world. Do you like it, Heidi? Love you. If women of different countries could create such beautiful quilt, you know, so we can create beautiful world, the real world. It is possible, you know, because
если все будут понимать так, как матери понимают,
if all
как
the
матери
people,
все
you know,
земли
will
понимают это.
understand the ideas of the peace and of the world as it is understandable by the mothers.
Детям нужен только мир.
That children and people all over the world need
вот
only
как мы
peace, only
все
peace.
думают.
Yes, everybody's here. Yes,
We're all excited about this.
Want me to carry? Do we need to
itself.
Oh, thank you. But everything else about it was that what a wonderful square.
Oh, God. Diane. Gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
It looks so Russian, too, doesn't it? I mean, it just...
We got enough red in
It
it.
just looks... It does.
Diana,
Russian.
over in that corner, please.
I want to know everybody's straight reaction. What did you think when you first saw the Soviet part?
I was real impressed with what was going on, but that seems so stark. But it's been helped now. But in seeing it getting to see it now, it's. Yeah, I love it.
I was really disappointed at first. I felt like we had spent so many hours on this, hand doing it, and the other was so different. But I think it's a reflection of our different cultures.
Oh, when I saw it, I thought it is so Russian.
Really?
I mean, it reflects their clothing, particularly Ukrainian. So I just thought it was exactly what I expected.
It wasn't all what I expected.
Really?
That's funny.
But I know we're such elitists because if it isn't hand done, it's. Heidi, when you were there and you were talking with the Russian women, what was their reaction? What did they say about the possibilities of going to present these to the arms negotiators?
It was really interesting because it changed a lot from the first day to the last day that we were together. The first day, we'd just met each other, and suddenly by circumstance we were plunged into discussing what might happen to this quilt.
Значит, выражает волю нашего народа. А вот то, что преподнести, это подарить это переговору, это главы двух государств. Мне кажется, это бессмысленно.
Kinishkan says that she thinks, maybe it won't be very useful, or maybe even there is no sense to present it to the leaders at the Geneva talks. Our people do their best for strengthening peace all over the world. There is no sense to appeal to them and ask them about peace. They express our feelings already. Maybe it will be more useful and it will make our quilt more popular and to have more public I don't know the word. Yes, appeal. If we present it to the United Nations.
Basically, they felt that, of course, their negotiators are their representatives. They want peace very much as demonstrated by their efforts in the last 30 years. It would be insulting to suggest by the presentation of this quilt that they don't, and it would be a waste of time to present it to the Americans because they wouldn't pay any attention to it.
And this is what.
And I felt really depressed and thought, oh, now what am I going to do?
We truly do not see the presentation of this quilt as a rebuke to the negotiators of either side. We want to communicate with them on a personal level, communicate our support and our strong conviction about the reasons we have for working together.
What harm would it do if it were presented on temporary basis to hang in the
Perhaps
Geneva?
by the UN, if we were to make a presentation to the UN,
Это было
and
бы,
perhaps
конечно,
then
здорово. Вот об этом и как раз например, лично я предлагаю так.
Вот,
Мне кажется, это будет правильнее.
And Kinishkan suppose that this is a very good idea.
and then perhaps with the UN as a
will be very
vehicle,
useful.
we could have it hung with the negotiators, perhaps, from the UN.
I don't know, Heidi.
Does that seem silly?
I don't know, Because again, the United Nations, United Nations again appeal to the participants of the talks, But from my point of view, we are public again, So the idea is just maybe to put it at the headquarters of the United Nations in order to give people, as much people as possible, to see, to know the idea, For example, as Boyce quilts, were put in our museum at the Friendship Society, and you can't imagine how many people write to our committee, because they now know how American women are active for peace. They know now about the families of these people, they write to each other and so on.
But you don't see the negotiators
Let's
as...
discuss. Let's discuss.
Yes, let's discuss.
discuss with the women at least, you know. Поставили эту пальму. Сколько женщин стали писать, что как это приятно было узнать.
The way it ended was me sending a written proposal on all your behalfs. I should tell you what you proposed. That we have a joint delegation of Soviet, American, and British women, since the Mothers for Peace have been so instrumental in helping us make this happen, to go to Geneva. And then together we arranged for it to hang in the negotiating halls. I felt hopeful that we would be able to work something out. And increasingly I felt that a large part of the value was the process of working something out, whatever it is we work out.
I think that's what we have to keep doing, is listening to what the people that we're working with are saying and trying to see things from their perspective and understand it and then act on it, so that it not only is a joint stitchery but a joint philosophical venture too.
The number one request is that it hangs in the negotiation halls where the Soviets and the Americans are. Right. The number two request, if that's not possible, is that a Soviet negotiator will see it. And the third is Thursday to have a group of Soviet officials receive us.
So are we going to take the quilt with us today?
Yes, I think we should, definitely.
So they can sort of allay their fears.
Absolutely.
Knock them off the feet.
Definitely.
It's a quilt. It's 9x9 quilt, and we'd like him to stand in front of it, sort of give our talk in front of it.
Okay. Would you like to put it on the conference table?
That won't work.
No,
it has to be on we have a stand for it.
Right. We may need to go over here for the ceiling because it's going to be too low underneath here. It needs to be
outstretched.
Yes, right.
It's a nice project.
Oh, isn't it? It's so very, very special. And to be able to have it here at the negotiation table where both sides meet is what we've dreamed of.
Okay, not down.
Now, the American negotiations team is going to be here until Wednesday.
Well, tomorrow is the last day of the round. We're having a joint plenary session with the Soviets at this table at 11 o'clock tomorrow, and that will be the official closing of round 4 of the negotiation. So people will still be around for other things, but the round closes tomorrow officially.
Fine.
So, Ambassador Kempelman, this is Mrs. Cushman.
Hello,
How do you
Mrs.
do,
Cushman. Nice to see you.
Delighted to meet you.
It's a pleasure for me to be
great
here and have you
honor.
all with us. Yes.
Thank you.
I'm going to take a look at that in a moment.
Hello, I'm Robin Furnish. It's a pleasure to meet you.
How do you do?
How do you do? I'm Heidi Reed from Idaho.
You wrote me.
I did.
You didn't get my letter.
No.
I have a copy of it here.
I'm Lynn McCollum from Boise.
Nice to see you. Now, can I take a look at this?
Oh, you certainly may, Ambassador.
I assume the Russian says what the English says.
You're absolutely right, yes.
That's very beautifully done, I think.
It's my grandson, and I did the square for him.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And if
Where is your grandson living?
he's in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles?
Now, if things were different, this is a little Soviet child, they might play together.
They should play together.
And I hope maybe someday they will grow up together.
I would hope so, too.
This little boy right here, I didn't bring his picture, but he's one of the local basketball players' sons. And this
Local meaning?
Boise local.
Boise. That's fine. That's fine.
This was taken on his first birthday. And I also did a square of a little Soviet boy. And this square was really, really special for me.
This one?
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
This is him on a motorbike.
Darling boy, yes.
And translating this photograph into stitchery made me have to stare at this for a good long time, and I just fell in love with this little guy.
Well, you should. It's easy to do.
Yeah. What this meant to me was that our children are so alike, and it's so special to have them here face to face next to each other, and I hope that we will be also.
We're so happy to
Well,
meet with
and
you
I'm pleased.
in this historic
Thank
place. It was our dream when we created this quilt that it could be here. We feel as if, and I'm sure you do as well, that the world is terribly threatened. And kids everywhere feel as if part of their future hinges on negotiation. And we feel, if we have given birth to life, that it should continue and we should never let go of it. And if there's anything we can do to add wisdom and confidence to the world, we say it through our quilts, to try to create a better day for children so that they too will have their chance to address the future and its dreams.
My own personal view is that we are nowhere near war. That as a matter of fact, you've had the longest period of peace in modern European history since the end of the Second World War. And we ought to understand that. And though we want to get rid of the nuclear armaments, I think the existence of those armaments, we should understand, has proved a deterrent so that war becomes unthinkable because we have these nuclear weapons. So I wouldn't get too upset about prospects. I think governments understand now, increasingly, I hope they do, that we must do everything we can to try to establish peace between us.
But Ambassador, I think what we need to see is some of those weapons stridently, step by step, dismantled for peaceful uses, redirected.
That's the American position.
And we need to do that. And until that begins to happen on a fairly fluid scale, no, we won't be satisfied. I feel almost as if we're living on the brink of death with all of this overkill.
Yeah, but it's that which I wanted to address, because we're not living on the brink of death. We have a definite objective, which is to get rid of the armaments. And this is the American position in these negotiations. And this is what we're trying to do in these negotiations. But I just don't feel we should believe that we're somehow on the brink of some utter catastrophe, because we are not. And I repeat, we have had a very long period of peace. We want it to be a permanent peace, which means we have to deal with the problems that create tensions between us. And these problems have to be dealt with.
What is so important for our friends and the citizens back home to know is that Soviet negotiators, as well as American negotiators, could see this quilt. But we would like to ask you if this could be in the chambers here. I understand the closing session is tomorrow. Could it be here in the chambers for an hour or 2 hours so that we know that both the Soviet negotiator and yourself have seen it?
I'll be glad to ask
Would you be
them.
willing?
I'll be glad to ask them.
That would be just
See
wonderful.
what they think about it, yes.
We appreciate that very much.
Why don't you try to make an effort to see the Soviet?
We have already.
Our dream is that you are together in front of it.
We are meeting with them on Thursday.
Oh, are you? Good.
But it is important for us to know that both of you saw it in the same room.
Well, I'll ask them about it.
That would be great.
That's wonderful.
Thank you for
us,
coming.
sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador,
All right.
so much.
Good. Bye.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you very much. I didn't believe him.
Well, I think he gave us his regular line. I just saw some breakthrough in his body language. A few times he let down.
He says he's going to do it. He's going to put his best foot into it and really go for having it exhibited there.
After all, he just finished saying, that's the American position, right?
I saw a really sympathetic look on his face several times. That was. So he really,
Not
really...
diplomatic, you mean?
Yes. I mean, like a real human being.
Hello. How are you?
Ambassador Natalia Dolgopolova is supposed to be here for our sharing with you of this quilt. And we are very concerned that she's not here because she has not arrived yet. She is supposed to arrive tomorrow.
I see.
Because this quilt, sir, is so much the hearts and people of the mothers in the Soviet Union and the United States. And we feel terribly distressed that she's not here right now. And we hope that you understand this.
But I think the most important thing that you are here and you can communicate to me what you would like to.
But do you understand this, our
yes,
feeling
I
of it?
understand it.
Can we set up the quilt right now? Do you have time? You must see it.
Oh.
Children from your country and our
Yes.
country. Fine, we'll set it up right now.
It's nice. And all those faces here are faces that do reflect real people.
Children.
Yes?
These are
real children.
portraits of Soviet children and
Of
American children.
I see.
And it took about 1,000 hours.
Yeah.
По-моему, точно на мою внучку похоже.
Так это вот русская девочка. I understand that's a Russian girl.
Yes.
Soviet girl. Yeah, in fact. Yes.
You see, General Starodubov has a granddaughter, and so it's very much
like her?
her.
It very
Beautiful
well may
little
be
girl.
her.
And with every stitch, sir, it is a labor of love and our desire to be in great accord, people to people. And I hope you understand that.
Yes, and I appreciate your coming here. And we are trying hard, in fact, to reach an agreement that would make it possible to exclude the arms race in space and to get an end to the arms race on Earth. Although there are no great results that we can boast of, we still think that it's our duty, it's our obligation to all the women and to all the men on Earth to follow the line to bring about results that would make it possible to make our life on this small planet more safe. And that's why we are here. That's why we are talking here. Thank you. And I hope that together with the support of all the women on Earth, we maybe can just produce some results.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Let's see. Oh, you're Mr. Kordachev. I had it written the other way. Hi, good morning. How you doing? Okay, please go ahead. I'm sorry, Swiss TV's not on the pool today. It's ARD, German TV.
Mr. Schroeder, why was the quilt after we were told it would hang in with the negotiators, why was it moved out to the elevators?
Well, you were told that he would bring it up with Ambassador Karpov and that we would see what we could do. He brought it up with Ambassador Karpov, and based on that discussion, we decided that we'd put it where it is, which is where people will see it when they come off the elevator.
Okay, our understanding on the phone with the Soviet mission is that concurrently was that it was, yes.
Well, I don't know to whom you spoke to at the Soviet mission, and this is the best we could do.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's in the elevator hall. It's not in the room with the negotiators, actually. They've moved it out to the elevator. Apparently what we said with Karpov gave us a yes at the Soviet mission, but he said that they spoke to the Soviets and that that's as close as they could get was in the elevator area, and he said it's the best we can do and it's out there. You know, they'll both walk by it and everybody will see it.
Well, at least that was the minimum hope we had, but at least it's there.
I feel disappointed that it isn't going to be right in physically with the negotiators when they're going over their information and hashing it all out, because I kind of feel like it's been pushed aside and it's easier to ignore it that way, and it's hard to ignore it when it's right there and it's brilliant colors and the children's faces. If it's right there in the meeting with them, it's sort of going to distract them, or my feelings are that it would be a little bit distracting and have to speak to them. But it's up there that far.
Oh, I think there's a certain story here simply by the fact that they reduced it to where it's hanging. Their minds are of that they are not ready for this message yet, and it just means that it's a long, hard struggle. We've got a lot to do yet.
You know, I feel so much of the power of what we've done. A great disappointment that the quilt was not in the negotiation room. We worked for that, Robin. All those women back home, we really worked for that. You can't just dwell on the fact that it's not right there in the room, because they have to walk right by it. You know, they have to shoulder right by it, all of them together. I want it in the room. It's more than it not being in the building. It's more than it being stuck on the first floor. It's there. You know, the quilt, I understand that message. The quilt speaks truth to power. It also transcends that line, because it isn't just for them, it's for all the people that gathered hope out of working on that and pride out of the fact that they were part of a cooperative project with Soviet women, where previously they had believed it wasn't possible to do anything with Soviet women, that you do it against.
Big part of the experience in Geneva was working together as a group, encouraging each other's growth and dealing with conflict and being good communicators. It all, what we were trying to manage a worldwide symbol for, it all boils down to how one individual gets along with another one, you know, and we got to deal with it on both levels.
Quilts are a vehicle. They're not the end. They're just the process. It's just like as a runner, you run and it's the process of running. It's not just winning. And I can see the stitches just going along like a jogger. And it's the process of these stitches that truly affect people and change people. And for me, I can't imagine what my life was. I just can't imagine what my life was before the Quilt Project.
Oh, yes. It's very naive to think that you can stop nuclear war. It's very naive to think that you can change the world and stop the destruction that we might all be facing. It's very naive, yet you have to do it.
It's been a lot of work, but at the same time, it's given my children a sense of hope. It's given me a sense of hope, and it's been a lot of fun.
When we sit down and make a quilt with thousands of tiny stitches, I feel it's a real act of faith in the future, in our ability to create the future.